Good afternoon and morning to everybody out there. Welcome to the November edition of the National At-Home Dad Network's DadX Discussions. My name is Matt Strain, and I'm glad to have everybody here with us, both live on Facebook and YouTube, as well as those of you who are watching this as the replay recording, because as we all know, parents don't always have a spare hour that they can dedicate to sitting in front of a computer. So this month, we're bringing on Jeremy Roadruck. Jeremy is a men's consultant. He's got almost 30 years of experience helping men and dads be better versions of themselves. And this particular month, he is coming on to talk to us about hacking communication with our kids. Jeremy was scheduled to be one of the speakers at Home DadCon in St. Louis this last year. Unfortunately, due to personal conflicts, he was not able to attend. And I, for one, was really looking forward to his presentation because I know that I have difficulties from time to time getting, clear communication lines going between me and my two kids. And Lord knows, with the holidays coming up and all of the school breaks and the kids being here full time all day, I need all the help I can get, and I'm sure a lot of you guys do too. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Jeremy. And Jeremy, welcome aboard. You're unfrozen now.
My mic. How you doing, sir?
There we go. Doing well. How about yourself?
Yep, I moved. I'm like feet from my Wi-Fi, so we should be good. But we'll see.
Yeah, I know that we were having a little bit of trouble with stuttering earlier, but hopefully the recording will take care of all of that. In the meantime, we're just going to plunge on ahead. So, Jeremy, a little bit of background. What got you started in this field in general, as far as like consulting with men and trying to help us all become a little better version of ourselves?
Yeah, well, thank you. So basically, I had some bad stuff happen at 5 and 6 that took me sideways, angry, shut off, back against the wall, can't trust anyone. And then about 20 years old, I got involved in martial arts. And that became a way for me to get my mind, my body, my emotions, my social skills to kind of come together and get out of my own way. Stop being such a jerk. When you have a room full of people that can kick your butt, it kind of cuts through the ego pretty fast. And so that was sort of how I put Humpty Dumpty back together. And then I started working with students, and I had a really good affinity for the problem kids because I was one. And so I just treated them like they were intelligent and capable, and they responded to me versus a lot of adults that do your things. And it's like, yeah, 3-finger salute, read between the lines. Yeah. And so those kids that have that chip on their shoulder, I was like, cool, let's just go play. Like how's that working for you? You want it easier? Because we can make it easier. I mean, you can make it harder too, I guess. And so once I began working with kids and I started teaching in my own school, and then I saw a lot of parents basically bring their kids to martial arts. My kid has discipline, they need more confidence, or my kid has plenty of confidence, they need more discipline. And so we're kind of smoothing that out. And what I saw was the kids don't really need a lot of work, but a lot of times the parents aren't on the same page with each other, and they're not interfacing with the kids the way they would like. Maybe your kid learns in a different communication style than you're used to. And so because of that, we got into, I got to work with the parents. And so I began teaching, I began to work with them on that level. And then women have a lot of support, men often don't, or they get made wrong for not doing things the right way. And it's like, no, a lot of times men, left brain people, they have a different way of organizing things. And so that's what took me into working specifically with men and with dads, because we can solve the problem, but the problem isn't always what we think the problem is.
Right.
What if it wasn't a problem? Well, what if it was an invitation to connect and understand? And then that changes the entire everything of it all.
Right. So in regards to your hacking communication with your kids,
I feel like I cut in and out a bunch.
You've been cutting in and out a little bit, but I'm following the gist of it, and I'm assuming that most of the people are. If anybody's having trouble or needs something repeated, please put something in the comments. We receive them live here on screen so that we can adjust things as we need to. So please help us help you. As far as hacking communication with your kids, that's a big one. Now, I can't speak for everybody else out there. I can only talk about the difficulties that I have. I have a 10-year-old who will be 11 in January, and I have a 7-year-old, my daughter and son in that order. The biggest issue that I have with the two of them is attention. They will come and they will ask a question, and the moment that they either get a negative response or they've heard the part of it that they want to hear, they just tune out. And again, the standard way that most parents deal with that is, when you see that glazed eye look, you start with well, what did I just say? And see if they can repeat it back to you. Have we lost you? Are you?
I'm still catching you. It's just
okay.
It's cutting in, but I'm following so far.
Okay. We asked the question of, well, what did I just say? And they'll repeat kind of sort of what I said, but invariably they're missing a couple of the important points that I was trying to get across. And I mean, I get it. I remember being a kid. I didn't want to listen to anything my parents said either. I just want to know a way to do it better.
Yeah. So that right there, we would call a chunking issue because so basically kids before 3 to 5, totally selfish, totally self-absorbed, functionally sociopaths because empathy hasn't turned on yet. They literally don't understand you have your own ideas and thoughts and feelings and needs and wants. Then between 3 and 5, empathy kicks in. We begin to start to understand the world does not revolve around us. And that goes up until about 9-ish, somewhere between 8 to 12, it all begins to go off the rails again because kids start to go into puberty and their brain gets more complicated. They can handle more stuff, but they go back into themselves because their model of the world, that range between about 5 to 8, 5 to 9, I want to be a good boy. I want to be a good girl. I want to please the authority figure. I want to be part of the pack, part of the team. I call that dog training mode. And it's a window of, I want to be, tell me what to do. I want to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they begin to no, I'm going to figure it out for myself. I don't know that that's the right thing. Their own stuff. They're running their own needs and wants and thoughts. And so we're saying stuff, but they're hearing this other dialogue internally. And so we have to chunk down into smaller bites. And then we can approach it from different ways. If words don't work, write it down.
Okay.
Hold on, kid. I want to get something across to you. Come here for a second. Big idea is this. And you write down the big idea, breakdown, challenge, chores, responsibility. Big idea is this. The key things are bop, bop, bop. And you write a bulleted list. Because then they can see what you're writing. It anchors them in a different way because the words are bouncing around and blah, blah, blah. And if they're not looking, they're not listening. When I write it down, also, you versus me talking this way can create a battle. When we write down what we're communicating, it's third party. And now we're communicating about our communication. And it's less personal crash, ego, you don't like. And it's more, here's what I'm trying to get across. And then you ask for feedback. How's that landing for you? Does that make sense? What's weird about this? What's confusing about this? What's strange about this? What's something you disagree with? And now we can begin to have a discussion about what I'm trying to convey and how can I play with the words that I'm using to make it frickin' land inside their head.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, one of the phrases that we use in our house, my wife is a psychiatrist. So she periodically has to remind me that, at this point in their lives, this whole frontal lobe thing is just barely starting to exist.
Yeah, it doesn't fully link in for women until like mid-20s and men early to mid-30s. So the ability to
That
think
sounds about
things
right for
through
me.
takes a long frickin' time.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
some of the problems that, are just common, in my opinion, amongst all parents is, there's always the constant resistance of doing things that, to be blunt, we don't want to do. Which, I mean, that's just part of being alive, is we all do things all day long that we don't want to do, whether it's waiting in line somewhere. With my kids lately, it's the very idea of cleaning up anything. We're more than happy to play with toys and have a great time. But the moment it comes time to clean up, it's like I'm asking them to complete some Sisyphean task. And no matter how many times we talk about the fact that, if you just do it every time, like a little bit every day, it won't be this huge deal. But unfortunately, right now, your bedroom is a foot deep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that right there is so with kids, I run an ascension ladder. There's self-control is the master skill, because without self-control, nothing else happens. Then we go to focus. So like, what are you paying attention to? Respect, showing that you care. Discipline, doing what you're supposed to do, no matter if you like it or not. And then self-confidence, believing in yourself. And the challenge is, at the age you're talking, what your kids care about and what you care about is out of alignment. So
Oh,
you
absolutely.
are, well, you're supposed to care, right?
Right.
And that's, you guys are, the breakdown is in where discipline is, because what you think they should care about and what they actually care about are doing this.
Right.
And so what we do is we align vision and values. Hey
Mm-hmm.
kid, do you want to borrow the car when you're 16? Yeah. Okay. Well, a car is 2,000 pounds of death. It can kill you, it can kill other people if you're not careful. So your car is big thing. Your room in comparison to the car, big thing, medium thing, small thing, right? Does your room right now help me feel warm, big, and happy and trust your ability to make good decisions? Or am I kind of scared of your room? Because if your room scares me, what do you think the chances are you're going to borrow the car? What if there was a way you could control that? What
Dang.
if your room made me feel warm, big, and happy? Then we can go to a medium challenge, then we can go to a big challenge. So it's up to you. I'm just here to facilitate. It's up to you. Do you
Yeah.
want to have movies this weekend? You want to have pizza this weekend? Do you want to pick dinner this weekend? We got to align vision and values. What do they care about? Where is their priority? And how can I align? I want to say leverage, because then it starts to become transactional. And if you don't do this, then you don't get that. But I would love for you to have this experience, but please understand, if I don't feel warm, big, and happy, I control the money, I control the internet, I control your schedule. And if that's not helping me feel warm, big, and happy, what am I going to share with you? Good stuff or not so much? So which
Yeah.
adventure do you want to have?
See, and that makes sense, because that whole transactional thing is what I'm so desperately trying to get away from.
Right.
I'm 52 at this point in my life. I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, at a time when children were supposed to be seen and not heard.
Right.
There was no questioning. If I was asked to do something and I said why, there was only one answer, and it was because I said so, or
Yeah.
because I'm the father, I'm the mother,
Mhm.
and you are the child, and that was the
Yep.
end of it.
Exactly.
I don't want to do that to my kids,
Right.
because I know that with me, that did nothing but build resentment.
Right. And honestly, though, sometimes that is the right answer, because we don't have the time to get into a dialogue. This is not Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's an emergency. Let's go to the ready room and have a meeting.
Right.
Right. This is original series. Kirk, make the decision, pull the trigger. We'll figure out as we go. Sometimes that's the reality, kid. Look, I love you. Right now, I need you just to shut up and do it. We'll talk about it later about why and what we should do different and how we can fix this. But now we don't have the time. Move your butt or you lose out. Which is it? So there's a place for that positional authority because I said so, but it's a sometimes thing. If it's the only answer, all we have is a hammer.
Yeah.
And so it's like we really want to create influential leadership, which is aligning vision and values. That's why hacking communication is so important. If your kid is auditory, but you keep trying to show them what you want or scratch it around, they're visual, but you keep trying to tell them what you want, you're never going to get traction simply because you're literally communicating in two entirely different pathways. And so it's part of that. Look, I don't want to knee jerk pull this and just like do it or I smack you. But go back, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 years ago. If you didn't do what we said, the whole community dies because spoiled meat, because we lost water in the desert. There was a reason for those methodologies. We don't need to use that. But our nervous system is still wired that way. So kid, you make me mad enough, we're going to have a big problem. And I don't want to be that guy. So now we as adults are in this tension of like, what do I do? And that's where a lot of the work I do comes in sideways and says, okay, let's play a game. We both get to win. Let's change the game.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, because I said so sometimes. And you got to tell your kids that, look, in life, there's going to be situations, shut up and do it. Whether you like it or not is completely beyond the point. That's just the reality of the world sometimes. The cool part is when you guys are in charge, you could create something different. I wish you luck.
Yeah, the endless curse of I hope your kids grow up to be just like you.
Yeah, that's fine with me because I know how to handle that.
Yeah, well,
I am that kid. Let's do it.
Unfortunately, I'm also in that position. There have been several times. My mom lives here locally, which is a huge help to us as a family because it gives us freedom to have my mom come over and watch the kids so that we can go out and do things that need to be done.
That's right.
Exactly. However, one of the things that's really funny is I'll go to my mom to complain about something and, she's there for me, but there's a big old smile on her face the whole time as it's, and, the minute the smile comes, I'm like, yeah, I remember doing this to you too.
Yep.
But, and again, my parents are a product of their time.
Correct.
Did they do things the way that we parent today? Absolutely not. But you know what? They did things the best they could with the information that they had in 1978 and 1981. Whereas we're now operating on information that we have 50 years later.
Correct.
Which is important to remember. And again, I know that not everybody had a great parenting experience, and I don't want to play down anybody who had negative experiences with their parents.
Oh yeah.
I just know that with my parents, I have found the ability to look back with a little bit more grace than I did in my younger years.
That's part
having children of my own was quite humbling.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the challenge of not putting on ethnocentric goggles and judging. They should have known. And it's like, they did the best they had with what they have available. We're doing the best we have with what we have available. And the truth is, all of us are dumber now than we will ever be 10 years in the future. I just haven't figured out how to get 10 years in the future now. So the only way I know to get there is walk the 10 years and pay attention as you go.
Whole way.
Exactly. And do your best not to do damage along the way.
Right. Now, earlier, you were talking about how you do a multi-step program in working with the kids.
Yes.
And we kind of jumped ahead to that whole aligning values. Let's go back to the beginning of that ladder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where does the foundation start?
So everything starts with awareness, right? So I've got like my overall framework when I'm consulting with someone and how to build where they're at, where they want to go, right? First step is always awareness. You cannot address something you are unaware of, right? Carl Jung, famous psychologist, student of Freud, he said, until the unconscious is made conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. Right? A lot of us running programs in our unconscious mind. We don't know. We were raised, we had certain critical experiences, we had certain impacts in life at a young age, and they begin to drive us. And until we become aware of that BS, that belief system, it dominates us. And so, first step is always awareness. If it doesn't feel effortless, if you don't feel warm, big, and happy, they don't feel warm, big, and happy. That's what I call a game worth winning, is we both get to feel good, right? In your marriage, if one of us feels warm, big, happy, the other feels small, sad, cold on a regular basis, probably not a great relationship long term. If our kids feel that way, if our business partners feel that way, if our clients feel that way, any feedback, if somebody's feeling small, sad, cold inside, that is an invitation to explore, what are we doing? Can we change the game that we're playing and do it differently? I won't say better, but I'll just say differently to get a different result. And so awareness is always the first step.
Okay.
Second step is acceptance. It doesn't mean you agree with what's going on, but I have to accept the reality of the situation. It's just like in part of my life as a martial artist and fighting, someone's going to throw a punch at you and you're like, ha, 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 you are too weak. That punch will not affect me. Okay, you can have that belief system up until like the microsecond before it hits you, and then reality will cash that check. And if you're smart, you see the punch coming, you address it before it gets there. So I have to accept the fact I'm being punched. I have a workshop I do for falling safely. My mom fell and suffered a critical brain injury. So I have this falling safely workshop for everyone. And you have to accept the fact that you're falling. If you resist the fall, once you create a stiff edge and it hits the ground, stiff things break, pokey things break. We need crumple zones. And so when you accept, that's when you gain the power to start affecting change. What you resist will persist. My kid's not listening, let me get louder. They listen less, let me get louderer. After two times, you don't get the result. That's feedback. Change your approach. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Doesn't mean they're wrong. What it means is what you're doing is not working to get you to your desired result. So harder, faster, more of the same strategy. Nah, just change. It might work tomorrow. It might have worked yesterday. It's not working right now, and that's okay. Take that feedback. That's awareness and acceptance. Oh, I'm getting this feedback from my kid. Cool. Right? You're being loud and your kid says, Daddy, stop yelling at me. And then you start yelling, I'm not yelling at you. And it's like, whoa, how about this? Wait a minute, kid. I'm not yelling. To me, this is a 4 on a 10-point scale. And I'm using my hands to show size. What is this? What does this sound like for you? Do I sound like a 4 or do I sound like a bigger number? That's an 8, Daddy. You're scaring me. Oh my gosh. So you're telling me, one second here, if I get like this, that's an 8 to you, but to me it's only a 4. Okay, hold on one second. What if I go down here and this is like a 3 for me or 2 for me? How does this sound for you? Does this sound better? That's a way we can, in the moment, retool our energy state, because we're getting this feedback, because this little person, this smaller body, smaller ears, is receiving us in a different way. Cool. What great feedback. Thank you. Now, do I have the right to be loud? Of course I do. But if I want to maintain a relationship with this young person and have them trust me, adjusting what I'm doing based on the feedback might not be a bad idea.
Now, you saying that brings to mind a memory, and I really, really wish I could remember who it was that posted it. But years ago, one of our members in our Facebook group posted the most eye-opening picture I had ever seen in my lifetime. The dad had handed their cell phone to their child and had the child take a picture of the dad. And it was amazing from the child's perspective how huge and towering that dad was. Like,
yes,
I can't speak for everybody. It literally made me feel uncomfortable. Like to look at that and realize,
we're
oh my
giants.
God, like if somebody was that close to me and that much taller than me and wasn't Arvis, I would lose my mind. Yeah. For those who know Arvis, you get that joke.
Yeah, we are power, right? I had in my martial arts school, I had a young lady who was about 5, and her dad was a power lifter. He was north of 300 pounds, 6'3", 6'4". I mean, just this huge mass of muscle and meat and power. And you give his daughter a high five in class. Oh, that was a good job. High five. And then she'll do a high five. And then she does a pirouette. And you see this giant mountain mass of a man melt. And she didn't see it because she's focused on class. But seeing him with this little giggle and this little thing, but he's like, she's barely past his knees. So to her, nothing will ever hurt my daddy. And we know the reality is different than that. But from where she's at with this huge guy, like exactly to your point, it's we forget, we as dads, as men in our families, just breathing puts pressure and puts power into our family dynamic. And sometimes we forget just how strong we actually are because we're focused on what we're not getting out there in the world, or we're not getting from some situation, and we forget these people that are looking to us for leadership and support and protection and guidance and validation and presence. And it's like, we got to remember just how big of a gift we actually are, as much as they're a gift to us, and honor that connection. That's awareness, acceptance.
Okay. All right. So
Right.
we got our first two there.
Yeah. Then we go to appreciation. And appreciation, there's two parts to appreciation, because appreciate, like, be grateful, like, thank you for telling me. But there's also appreciation, like, I can relate to that. I've been in a similar place. I've felt a similar way. We cannot appreciate something that we are rejecting, because then we come off as that positional authority. Shut up, kid. I know you don't know what you're talking about. You're stupid. You're dumb. I know what I'm talking about because I'm the grown up and I have the experience and I'm smarter, I'm bigger and stronger. And like we're creating this big, huge gap between us and the people we're trying to talk to, versus accepting where they're at and then appreciate, thank you for telling me. Thank you for the feedback. You know, truth be told, there was a time in my life I can't say I know exactly what you're going through because I'm not you and I don't know your situation, but I felt similar to that. And that creates an opening to now begin to build rapport and connection and influence. And once we've got those three things in place, then we can go to step 4, which is ownership. This is where I show up, where I can take action. And that leads to 5, which is the ability to respond, responsibility, instead of reacting. Because when we react, it's almost usually always out of fear. It's instinctive, it's self-preservation. And it's very rarely what we actually meant or wanted or intended. And so that ownership responsibility is almost impossible without the awareness, the acceptance, the appreciation first.
Right.
And so then you teach this to your teenagers and then practice it as a skill with them, because with your teenagers, and when I say teenager, I mean like even 11, even 9, when they start pushing back on your authority, you're teaching them how to start processing and thinking about what they're doing. And you're co-creating it, because look, kid, I'm a work in progress just as much as you are. I've just got more practice. And so I'm working these tools. Can you help me with them? We'll do it together.
Yeah.
And that begins to build so much rapport, and it takes down some of that emotional pushback, and it opens up more communication, because they can tell you I'm confused. They can tell you I'm overwhelmed. I'm probably at a 4 out of 10 on that, Dad. I need some more can you give me more clarity?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah, I can. Thank you, kid. High five. You rock. You're so smart. Where'd you learn that? You must have great parents.
Now, when you were talking about where I can take ownership, in that sentence, was the I like you as a father, or were you talking from the perspective of the child taking ownership of the situation?
Well, I
Or
can't
both?
control what they do or don't do. I can only influence it, but I can control what I do. So we're talking, this is self-referential: awareness, ownership, appreciation. Sorry, awareness, acceptance, appreciation, ownership, and then responsibility. That's my path to walk and model for my kids and explain, and then help them. Because then we go back to like when my daughter was young, and my wife taught me this particular tweak on timeout. But when she was 3-4 years old and she would go to timeout, it's pause, not okay, have a seat. 3 years old, you have 3 minutes. 4 years old, you have 4 minutes. Sit, breathe, get control. We will talk. And then we leave, we isolate. And whatever she needs to do, she needs to do. But then we come back at 3, 4, 5 minutes and be like, okay, kid, now we had you in timeout. Is that because you are the worst human being that has ever existed and you're horrible? Or is it because mom and dad don't love you? Or you did something that was not okay? Okay, hint, it was number C. You did something not okay. You are awesome. We love you. We love having you. You're such a cool person. What you did was causing some problems. So then we explain, in short sentences, but this was not okay. This is what it did. This is how it wasn't safe. What could we do different going forward? How could we make this better? And we, because it's team. Okay. Can I help you with that? Can we work on that together as a team? Awesome. High five, kid. I love you. Can I have a hug? And then you come back in. All right, cool. And that second piece of contextualizing and bringing them back into the tribe, like that's really the power of a timeout, because the timeout is just to get your emotional regulation under control for both of you. But then we isolate you from the pack, and we got to bring you back in and understand what you did for your level of complexity. But here's how we're going to make this better, and we love you. We have to separate the kid's identity from their actions, because if we don't, the kids will commingle. I'm in timeout because I was bad, not because I did something bad. And we don't even say bad. We just say that was not okay.
Gotcha.
Because even that phrase, let me one detail. You did something bad. That's a concrete concept. You did something not okay. What's the focus when I say not okay? The focus is okay. Was that self-control or not so much? Versus was that showing respect or not so much? I want my kid focused on the higher value. Was that respectful or not so much? Not was that respectful or disrespectful, because now we've created those two as co-equal concepts or constructs in their value structure. Versus was that respectful or not so much? Okay, well, let's work on a little bit more. How could we be a little bit more respectful? And that way we're keying them in. It's like, tell me, was that the truth or was that a story? Not was that a truth or a lie? Because then again, I put them on equal constructs. Was that the truth or a story? Because all stories are true. Only some of them actually happened. So was that a true story or is that a story that didn't happen? Okay, so can we talk about the true story? Thanks, kid. I love when you're honest with me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you have something on in the background that still has volume on? Because I'm getting a little bit of an echo when I talk.
There's a little bit here. Give me one second.
I'm just wondering if you have like volume on like a separate device or something.
They're upstairs with the door open. So let me text them real quick. Can you?
It's not horrible. It's just enough to catch my attention.
Yeah.
Now, when you were talking about the timeouts, it brings to mind, as my kids have gotten older, that entire stratagem has changed greatly. When they were little, we had one couch in the living room that was designated as the calm down couch. And the fact was, when somebody got really upset, they could go to that couch and they were allowed to yell and scream and cry and punch cushions and stomp feet and do whatever they needed to do to get it out on that couch. And nobody would interrupt them and nobody would stop them. And then once they were done, they could come back and we could go back to speaking calmly. As the kids have gotten older, their rooms have become that space. Is that, both of our children understand. And again, my son, Patrick, is 7. Lily is 10, almost going on 30. But both of them understand if they go in their room and close their door, we will knock. Like, even as their parent, I will knock on the door and say, it's Dad, can I come in? And if they say no, I'll look up and say, well, you take some time. I'll come back and check and see if you're ready to talk in a little bit. And I'll go away for another 5 or 10 minutes and then come back and check again. They can't lock me out forever. I mean, first of all, eventually they're going to get hungry and there's no food in the room. But truthfully, I'm going to come back and harp on it until eventually they're going to let me in so that we can have that discussion. Which I think is an important thing, that kids have a space where they feel like they can take time to themselves, whether it's you imposing them taking that time or whether they've just decided to do it on their own.
Yeah, it's important that they have that autonomy. But again, this is where we balance the positional authority, because I said so, and the influential leadership, because kids will game and kids are selfish, like as a natural creature. And so they can use that as now it's too late for me to do my chores. Oh, guess I got to eat dinner and then go to bed. Oh darn! And it's like once you
Yeah.
start to see that pattern, it's like, okay, numbnut, we're not playing that
Yeah.
game anymore. And
Luckily,
that's where
none of mine have pushed it past about 5 to 10 minutes tops.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
and,
that's where
and
we get
again, and if it's a situation that is, genuinely dire,
mhm,
if someone has been hurt, if there was, if we turned around and just clocked Big Sister,
right.
or did something like that, that is going to be handled right there in that moment, because that is
Mhm,
an egregious problem that needs
exactly.
to be handled in the moment. And we don't
Yeah,
have the freedom to just be like, oh, well, take your time to calm down and we'll
right,
talk about this later.
right. Like you can't come after somebody with a knife and then, oh, but you get your private time in your room. That's fine. It's like,
Yeah.
nah.
Yeah.
Like I
No,
had to
yeah.
explain. Like, we talk about self-control is when my mind controls my body and my emotions. And I taught
Hmm.
this in the kung fu school. Nobody has a right to touch you without your permission, unless you're a danger to yourself or others. Because if
Hmm.
you make yourself a danger to yourself or others, now you are putting the social construct, the social community in danger and jeopardy. Now you are going to have someone touching you without your permission, but it's to get you back into control. And the police will do that. The government will do that, whether it's jail or they'll put you to death. So we can take it to that extreme if you want. But life is a whole lot easier if we don't get to those extremes, if we can catch
Right.
stuff earlier. Right. And so
Absolutely.
then like I have a course called Finally Getting Your Kid to Listen, and one of the sections we go through is how to have a great ask, and we talk about levels of pressure, right? Because a lot of times adults will come in and they'll ask 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 and then they explode, and the kid's like, "What are you yelling at me for?" Because they for whatever reason. And so we go from an ask, like a level 3, and then we insist, which is a level 5, and then we demand, which is level 7, which is also when we introduce consequences if you don't. And then
Hmm.
we go to 9, which is enforce. And we still have room for 10, which is drop the hammer.
Hmm.
So it's a way to level of intensity a situation, but then you guys can begin to use that to define your energy state, because kids doing whatever, they're annoying, they're interrupting, whatever. Guys, I'm at a 5 moving towards a 7. So if you want me to put you in, if you want to get yourself in trouble, keep going. Or you could take a pause, breathe for a second, and let's see about getting back down to a 3. And that's really cool. What's even more cool is when your kids come to you and they rate themselves and say, I'm a 5 on this and I don't want to go to 7. Can you help me? And it's like, it's a tool to recognize just internal pressure,
Hmm.
internal, because like the 7 deadly sins are fantastic, but they're way overcomplicated for kids.
Yeah.
Warm, big, happy, small, sad, cold's a whole lot easier. Are you feeling warm, big, happy, or not so much? All right, let's fix that.
Hmm.
Right? Because then you can ask, if you don't feel warm, big, and happy, okay, let's do something about that. Let's affect some sort of change. Let's go for a walk. Let's have a snack. Let's take a nap. Let's go play. Let's
I mean,
go take.
my kids' elementary schools instituted a color coded system,
Hmm.
where you have green, yellow, red, blue,
Hmm.
blue targeting, the depression down, as opposed to yellow and red being, agitated, angry,
Hmm.
and green
Yep.
being, happy and calm.
Right.
And my kids are really good about talking about, I'm getting into that yellow, red zone. This is just a more varied way of discussing it, gives a few more options, so that there's a little
Correct.
bit more in between space for them to slot some things in, which might not be useful when they're like 3 or 4,
Right.
but at 10, 11, 12, I could see where like having multiple numbers would be a whole lot more useful to a parent
Yeah, absolutely. And
and a
it's
kid.
it's yeah, because it's how do we f the ineffable? And that's really what it comes down to, is let's just f it out. Like we can figure it out. It's fine. We just make it up. It's almost all of this stuff is heuristics anyway, right? Even like we go
I'm
in
going to
the
need to
go.
back you up. Can you define
Yeah.
that last word, the heuristics?
Yeah, heuristic is basically fuzzy logic.
Oh,
Like it's a
got
best guess. Like think about quantum theory, the electron shell in a quantum theory chemical model.
it. Mm-hmm.
Instead of there's these electron shells at certain energy states and there's like only two and only this and only this. Quantum theory is like, it's a 90% probability of being in this place, but it could be
Right.
wonky. We don't know until we observe it. right?
Gotcha.
And so like a lot of the inner psychological stuff, there's a lot of fuzziness to it, because even if we took like a chemical sample in your brain of whatever your level of neurotransmitters, but what does that mean to you? What's your lived experience? Because stress, well, there's eustress and estress. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Like we're going to keep splitting hairs. I call it psychological load. If a
Mhm.
person is under a lot of psychological load, they will tend not to be so warm, big, and happy.
Right.
You know, you walk around with 1,000 pounds on your back and then wonder why you're tired and your legs hurt. I don't know, maybe because you're carrying a lot of weight. Hmm?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the work I do, like I don't talk mental health, mental illness, I talk mental process, because
Mhm.
whatever feeling state you're in, there's some sort of process that got you there. There may be cognitive, there may be biological, whatever's driving the process. We could explore that. But like the idea that if I'm not mentally healthy, I must then be mentally ill. It's like, maybe you're just carrying more load in some ways. And if we talk, you could share the burden and it won't be so heavy. How about that? Let's look at the process of the story you're telling yourself. Are you really depressed, or are you just feeling low vibe and want to connect to yourself for a little bit and just don't feel like talking? Like that's okay too. If it's a one-off, if it's months and months and months, probably you should talk about something and figure something out and probably use more resources than what you have available right now. But these are all invitations to connect. These are all invitations to explore, versus I have the one true truth and you must answer to me. I'm like, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I think most of us have gotten to a point in our lives where we realize that there is nothing that is 100% right or 100% wrong in any direction, that like all of us exist in this like fuzzy state.
Exactly.
I do want to point out one of the people we have watching, Dawn, made a really great point. Thank you so much for joining us, Dawn. We really do appreciate having the audience here with us. And again, I remind everybody, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them into the comments section. We get those live. We see them as soon as you hit enter, and would love to be able to answer any personal questions that you have. Now, one thing that you had mentioned is you've talked about this course that you do multiple times to finally getting your kids to listen.
Mhm.
You have made an amazing offer, which is the idea that you're putting this promo code out here for 50% off the cost of that course. And
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, part of that discount is being given back as a donation to the National At Home Dad Network, which we're very, very
Yep.
thankful for.
10% of
Being
every sale, anytime. Mhm.
Oh, thank you. Again, we're a small nonprofit, so every little bit helps, especially as we enter into, the slower season, having just finished doing our convention out in St. Louis, which again, totally, literally, I was doing one of the breakouts on bulk cooking, being a retired chef, and I literally made them move my breakout in the schedule just so that I could go to yours.
Dang it. And I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me actually, I've got some slides. So let me run through
Uh-huh.
part of that.
Oh,
And
please,
this is a
please.
subset from finally getting your kids to listen.
Okay.
It's a tool I developed called the 4-stage communication model. And again, my whole thing is no fault, no blame, no guilt, no shame. It's just ownership and responsibility. And so to do that, how can we make the things we're doing be as objective as possible and take the personal
Mhm.
out of it, and stop pointing fingers and having to assign things? It's just like, oh, that's an interesting tool. Let's play with that. Let's explore. And so let
Yeah,
me
because I can't,
present.
again, I can't speak for every parent, but I know that every time I get into a shouting match with either one of my kids, I don't feel like anybody wins in that situation.
Exactly. That we call that a
Not them,
lose-lose
not
game.
me. We both end up walking away more angry and frustrated and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So if
And
you'll
that
set that
doesn't.
up, I'll be happy to put that out there. Here we
Yep.
go.
And then yeah. So you guys can see the hacking communication with your kid's screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. I was hoping I could. Nope, I got to go way back into settings to get rid of our little logo in the corner.
Oh, you
Hopefully,
could keep the logo. It's fine.
yeah. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't blocking out anything.
Yeah, we'll talk around it. This is more just
Yeah,
a trigger. But okay, so Matt, we'll just use you. Have you ever said anything?
yeah. course.
Oh, fantastic. Me too. I say
Like,
things all the time. And then there's also what they heard, right? And
yeah,
it feels like there's a wall between you guys. Like what I said, what they heard, that's not, that was not at all.
right.
And so really what we're going to do is we're going to break this apart, and we're going to pull some pieces out and really dig into this for a second with a frame. Nobody else's, this is my thing, it's my IP. I developed this, but it was because 6 years old, what people say, what people mean, and what people do are three different things. And I don't know who to trust. I don't know why it is that way. So I got to figure this out. So, is it just me? So then a little bit about me, Kung Fu guy, skill, ability. Oh yeah. Couple of best-selling books. Done a bunch of things, problem kid, blah, blah, blah. So here's the challenges I see with families, which is what kind of drives a lot of the things that I do. One is creating emotional safety for ourselves and for others. Number two is respecting and asserting boundaries. How do I respect someone else's boundary, even if I don't like it? But how do I assert my own boundary without having to yell and scream to have it be respected? How do I get clear communication instead of mind reading or projecting? Like a lot of times, people, the only exercise they get is jumping to conclusions. So how can I be clear? And then people getting locked in anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, or creating unwinnable games.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the biggest things I see, and I have solutions in all four areas. But what I rarely see is an actual lack of love. I see people doing the best they know how with the lived experiences they have. And I see a lot of unresolved wounds and people being stuck at the ripple, at the effect of those wounds, not knowing how to clean them up. And so the key to transformation is two parts. Number one is the stories we tell. Get out of fault, blame, guilt, shame. And that was part of, we talked about awareness, acceptance, appreciation, ownership, responsibility. That's how we begin. That's the ladder we climb. And then the second piece is games, which is learning how to create win-win games. I get to feel good and you get to feel good. We can choose at any point to play a new game. We can just say that, hey, can we just play a new game with each other? I don't like the old one. When I have a couple that I'm working with and they're like talking about divorce, I'm like, fantastic, go ahead, get divorced. Not from each other, but from the past way of relating to each other. And they're like, oh, is that possible? And it's like, yes, you can, that guy back there, I want to kick his butt. But me now, I'm learning and improving. So we can choose to play a new game at any moment. We can choose to tell a new story at any moment. And so we go back to this communication game. There's what you communicate and there's what they receive. Because you cannot control what they receive. You can only control what you communicate. And there's actually a total of 4 pieces. So when you communicate, there's 3 pieces. There's the words, you're wrong, you're mistaken. That's interesting. I'm curious. How did you arrive at that? Could you walk me through that? I want to understand better. Those are 3 different constellations of words. They didn't change whatever's going on. But if you tell someone they're wrong, they may push back. And if you tell them they're mistaken, they might push back not quite as hard. But if you get curious and ask for more information, they might not get defensive. They might be curious as well and explain themselves. So how did you arrive at that?
Yeah,
That right
we
there.
use a lot of what makes you feel that way.
Right. Right. Exactly. Second is tone. Dude. 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 That's interesting. I'm curious. 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 So same word, but where we put the emphasis changes the meaning, changes the dynamic, changes the pressure. And then finally body language. And body language is completely there's some stuff in our brains that are wired because we're primates, but there's also, if your mom waved her finger at you a certain way when she scolded you, there may be an emotional association. And then somebody else later wags their finger at you and all of a sudden you're reacting like a scolded little boy and you're like, what am I doing? And it's because those things have been locked into your unconscious mind. So these are the 3: heaven, human, earth: words, tones, body language. There are people that will tell you there's some percentage that matters. Throw that away because it was based on 2 studies. We can geek on that if we need to, but basically they came from 2 studies, audio recorded, meaning of 1 word, and they're commingled studies. So the stats are wrong. The guy that did the studies said you're using it wrong, but everyone ignores him because it's really easy to have these 3 percentages. And
Mm-hmm.
what matters is the person you're with, because for some people,
Mm-hmm.
word matters more. For other people, tone matters more. And for other people, don't look at me in that tone of voice.
Yeah.
What? What? I don't, okay.
Yeah.
So now we go back to the 4. From what
And
they receive, go ahead.
honestly, I would assume the younger my child is, the more that tone and body language
Correct.
are influential versus words.
Typically, yes, because they don't have the linguistics of, are you depressed or are you melancholy?
Right.
What? Like, are you wistful? Like we
Yeah.
use a lot of words that are fun. So like my daughter, when she was 6 and she had a tag on her shirt, she's like, this shirt, it's ailing me. I'm vexed, father. I'm like,
Yeah.
I love you, kid.
My daughter's a big reader and used the word malaise correctly the other day. What's
Beautiful.
wrong,
There
hon?
you
I
go.
just have a feeling of malaise.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'll get you some.
Yeah,
Do you want some mayonnaise to go with the malaise or some
well,
marmalade?
my immediate thought was, okay, I now know exactly how you feel. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it's
I get
fantastic.
that 100%.
And that actually leads right to the next piece, which is what they receive is based on their filters. And there's
Mm-hmm.
essentially 5. There's what they see, because some people are visual. There's auditory, what they hear. There's kinesthetic, what they feel. And there's conceptual, is what they think. And their lived experience. Because if they have unresolved experiences, then they are going to project that stuff at you because you remind them, the whole "you're triggering me." Triggers
Yeah.
only work when you have an association in your unconscious mind. We call that an anchor. When we
Mm-hmm.
collapse the anchor, the trigger becomes meaningless. It's just you have a constellation inside of certain associations through seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking. And
Yeah.
when we can reframe that, then the trigger is just information. It doesn't have anything to pull on anymore. And so this is what gets in the way of the other person fully receiving what we're communicating, because there's these filters that it has to work its way through. And why this is important is because whatever they receive will always, which is a very rare word for me, but it will always drive to their understanding. You can only understand based on what you received.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what they understand because we watch their actions. And if what we said and how they reacted to it is not where we were going, that is an interesting piece of feedback. Hold on. I think what I said and the way you're taking it, I did something wrong. I miscommunicated. Can I try that again? Can I walk that back for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, you're not listening to me. You never listen to me. You don't even care about, why do I even bother wasting my time saying anything to you? Because you just don't pay attention to me anyway. This
Mm-hmm.
person might not be an auditory communicator. They might need you to write it down. They might need you to draw a picture. It's not that they don't care. They may communicate in a different channel. And that's the whole
And
point
again,
is.
and we also can't stress enough the idea of modeling behavior.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh
one
my
of the
God.
things that I've had to work on very, very hard personally is that I've noticed that my kids get really, really focused on devices, whether it's tablet. My daughter has a phone, but it is a dumb phone, but I'm sure that will not last much longer.
Yep.
You know, at the same moment that I'm complaining about how much they're on their phone, I'm glancing at mine every time it buzzes.
Yep.
And I've begun making a concerted effort to not look or to wait until it's the right moment to look.
Yep.
And certainly not look at them and be like, wow, you've been spending too much time on your screens, and then go in the kitchen and surf the internet, like scroll social
Yep.
media or whatever.
Sorry, Dad. I can't hear what you're saying. Your actions are speaking too loud.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 100%. Kids don't become what we say. They become what we are.
Yeah. And again, I'm as guilty of that as anybody.
Yeah. Well, are you guilty, or is it just realizing you can take ownership and choose a new
Yeah.
game?
Well, I mean, that's my point, is I'm
Yeah.
aware of that mistake and I am working to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly, and this is the whole point of this feedback loop, is to start taking that ownership. So then what started this whole entire chain in the first place? Why did you even communicate what you wanted to communicate? Well, you had some sort of meaning or intention. You had something inside of you that you wanted to convey out to this other person. You have information to share, an experience, you wisdom, insight, a request. But it's like, here's what I meant, and here's what I communicated, which is what I said and the way that I said it and the tone that I used. Threw it over the wall. Their filters, what they received and what they understand, drove to their actions. And so this is the 4-stage communication model. So you can go, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Now, I believe I heard you say blah, blah, blah. And I could understand it to be A, or I could understand it to be Z. Am I close to what you meant, or did I miss something? And by interrupting the flow and asking for feedback before I jump to an understanding allows me to filter back what I'm receiving so that I'm not projecting and mind reading. I'm getting clarification and clarity before anything else, before I lose my shiz, before I jump to a conclusion, before I whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the use of, that's the framework and what it's designed to do. Here's what I said. Okay, well, here's what I heard. Here's what I received. I think I missed something. Could you tell me more?
Mm-hmm.
And now we can coach each other in our styles of communication to get what we want. But again, it goes back to, without awareness, we can't do any of this stuff.
Right.
And then it feels like you don't care, and it feels like you're not paying attention. With my daughter, eyes on me when I'm talking to you, please. When you are looking
Mm-hmm.
around the room and I'm talking to you, it does not feel like you're paying attention. You might be, but it doesn't feel like it for me. So eyes on me, please. Thank you. Right? So
Right.
then you can only control what you mean and what you communicate. With awareness, you can control that. You cannot control what they receive or what they understand, but you can influence it. But again,
Mm-hmm.
with awareness, right? Then the last piece I throw in, just as a frame, because men and women typically communicate differently, is, I would say, masculine, single point focus. Masculine gets focused in on what you communicate and what's received. I know what you said. I heard you. You said this. And they'll
Mm-hmm.
sit there and you'll listen to little kids. They get very dialed in. This is what you said. And they will hammer on you for the language structure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then the feminine right brain is more context. It's the container around. I know what you said, but what you meant was.
Right.
No, that's not what I meant at all. But thank you for sharing more of your context. So now I understand more of how you build your model of the world. What I really meant was this. And so another way I'll
Mm-hmm.
say this instead of masculine, feminine, because that can be
Well,
applicable for
I
some people.
love the fact that you define this as masculine feminine, because there are there are masculine and feminine aspects in everyone regardless of gender.
Correct.
I will be the first one to point out that my wife is a very factual, science-based person.
Or left brain.
She probably fits much more in that blue category, whereas
Mhm.
I fit much more in the red.
Right.
Regardless of our gender identities, it's just
Correct.
a way of describing the way of thinking.
Yeah, the way I say it is, instead of worrying about people's pokey in parts and pokey out parts, pay attention to
Mhm.
what energy is driving the bus. And
Right.
so I'll clarify these two shapes to say, what about head, left brain thinking compared to heart, right brain feeling?
Hmm.
Because then it's, if we look at it more like left brain activation, right brain activation, it takes a lot of the heteronormative stuff that can get
Yes.
wonky out of the equation. And the other thing
Yeah.
is, if we go back to the filters
Right.
right here, this begins to explain quote unquote neurodiversity. Every human
Hmm.
being is neurodiverse because every human being has a unique level of auditory, visual, kinesthetic, conceptual. And so it's like figuring out this person's filters different than this other person's filters.
Hmm.
Right. And it's being able to appreciate, oh, this is how you operate in sequence. Because for some people, what you say matters more than the tone. But for other people, the tone blows everything else away. I don't care what you do with your body. I don't care what you do with your words, because your tone shuts me down. I can't process when you talk to me like that. I literally can't hear anything. All I get is the vibe, and it just makes me want to go crawl under my bed and hide.
Hmm.
Well, hell, thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
I will do my best to work on that, and that's how we begin to start appreciating other people's models of the world, because every single one of us is walking around in our own unique reality, and we're all interfacing with each other. And so the more we can build bridges, the more we can appreciate and respect each other's models of the world, the more we can create games we both get to win.
Yeah.
Right. And then this is where we get into the 4 ways of learning, and I have a whole nother training, but we're out of time for that. But this is I cover this in detail in the Finally Getting Your Kids to Listen.
And again, I want to point out, if you're interested in that course, I wish I could make it a clickable link. Unfortunately, it isn't, but it is right there. I believe. Let's see.
Yeah, that's kinesthetic communication. So
Yes.
Dale, I can just read it. Dale says, my sons have issues communicating with each other and generally resort to physicality. Do you have any advice to get them to communicate rather than get physical with each other? What you could do is you could have them do like a dance battle, and you both separate, like you put down pads on the floor, tape squares, and they both dance battle their words, but no physical contact. You could have them put on safety gear and fight it out. What's basically happening, evolutionary biologists say that humanity developed language about 40,000 years ago, and it's the most recent evolution of our species, assuming you believe in all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if that were true, when somebody gets into a highly charged emotional place, their words often do that. And we lose the ability to speak. And it's easier just, here's my point, blam. And it's like, oh, you know what, guys, neutral corner, 10 minute, take a break. Calm down, neutral corners, make them go for a walk, make them do burpees, jumping jacks, make them burn that energy out, put on a music and they can dance furiously, or they can run in place furiously. Because you're basically activating the kinesthetic system, because my body is wired to take action. And my words are failing and you're not listening to me, so I will make you listen. And it's like, I appreciate that. But dude, if you guys haul off on each other, like you want to end up in the hospital with broken arms, do you want to fight me and I beat you both?
I forced my daughter to go on a run with me once. She swore she never wanted to do that again. But I did look at her as we finished up the run, and we did around 2 miles. And I looked at her at the end of the run and I said, "Are you still angry?" And she looked at me and went, "No, I'm way too tired to be angry." I'm like, "Great, then let's go back in and talk about this calmly."
Right.
Now, unfortunately, not everybody has the ability to go out and run with their kids. But like you said, running in place, dancing, find that other outlet for that aggression. I know a lot of dads who are hardcore gamers. Pick up the Switch and put them on Super Smash Brothers and let them beat the crud out of each other in a video game. I mean, find a fighting video game and let them whack on each other in a video game. Maybe that might help them get out of it.
It's expressing the energy in a way that's not them damaging each other. Simply because it's okay for you guys to have strong feelings about things. It's okay to feel, because what you feel, what you think is your private business. When you take action is when you begin to impact the world, and what's driving your action can start to become problematic. Get angry, rage out. That becomes your answer when you're overwhelmed. Dude, that's not sustainable long term without some serious consequences, because you rage out in public, you could get arrested. You could get in a fight with somebody who actually is more violent than you and they end your life and immediately. You could just get a random sucker punch, get hit, fall back, your head hits the curb and you're dead. Totally random happenstance. So it's helping your sons to kind of realize, like, where are we at, 0 to 10? Like, do we need to get violent on this?
I know, I spent 20 years before becoming a stay-at-home dad working professionally as a chef. And if there is one thing, and honestly, there's really only one thing that I miss about that life, and that was having access to a soundproof walk-in, where periodically, if I was that upset, I could just walk in the walk-in, shut the door, and scream my heart out and not have to worry about freaking anybody out. Unfortunately, I don't have a walk-in anymore. And I had to find new ways of dealing with that, because oddly enough, if you just scream bloody murder in the middle of the day, people react weird.
They get this strange sense of like, oh, you're not safe. And I'm like, oh, I'm just yelling.
Right. Exactly. We can't have that. But again, for anybody who is interested in the Lead Like a King, leadlikeaking.com, I'm assuming that's your website.
Yep. One of them. Yeah. You can go to leadlikeaking.com. Yeah. You can just go to courses and you'll see a couple of them. I have a Reignite Your Passion course. I have a bunch.
Yeah, and more
So yeah,
importantly, he's offering the promo code of At Home
at
Daddy-O
home patio.
for 50% off the Finally Getting Your Kids to Listen course. And, with 10% of that coming back to the National At Home Dad Network. We have gone actually a little bit overtime, but I can't lie. I'd be more than happy to keep this convo going for another hour, but we both have things we have to do. I do want to thank you for being here with me. You will be the last DadX discussion of 2024. We found in the past, honestly, with all the holidays coming up, trying to put something together in December is just an exercise in futility. It invariably ends up being two stressed people with zero audience. So we're going to take the month off so that everybody can enjoy their holidays. And hopefully some of this will help you guys, because Lord knows the holidays bring stress for everybody, especially families of all kinds. I do really, really appreciate your time, Jeremy. I do want to encourage everybody to please check out our website, athomedad.org. We are a 100% volunteer organization. We are run by a volunteer board. Everybody who does things, whether it's running our social media, whether it's the Home Dad Chat podcast, the DadX Discussions, our mental health support groups, our social groups, our sobriety support group, all of us are doing this on our own time as volunteers. So our membership dues are how we support these efforts. So please think of us, especially as we enter into this holiday giving season. So on behalf of the National At Home Dad Network, I want to thank you guys, everybody who's been with us, and you as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again in January. Everybody have a great holiday. Bye.
Bye. And Don says,